Well, thank you very much for that awesome introduction. So hello everyone. I'm so good to be here with all of you at this event. How does the sound? Sorry, I should check that. We good? Awesome. Okay, it's so good to be here with all of you at an event presented by Young Women of Influence. I was speaking to a few of the ladies before the presentation has started about how I had wished there were more opportunities when I was in my 20s and early 30s to seek advice and networking opportunities. So I'm thrilled about this event and hope that you all feel value tonight in participating. So tonight the theme is branding basics. I will start by talking about what I've learned about branding through my professional career. And then I'll complete the presentation by discussing the top 5 insights that have been helpful for me as I navigate through my personal journey. As my bio shares, I have a financial background, Bachelor of Commerce degree, and a CMA designation. The attractive feature of a CMA discipline is the differentiation of being a strategic management professional. I've always wanted to provide leadership and big picture thinking to an organization, and I figured that out pretty early on in my career. Part of that role I envisioned for myself was influencing long-term strategy and vision, and this is where branding comes into play. A company's brand is its essence, promise, and personality often is created and managed in conjunction with a company's vision, its mission, and its corporate values. As Jugo Juice's Senior VP, one of my roles is to build consensus and anchor Jugo Juice's position around a strong vision and brand. As part of my recent transition to Senior VP, one of my first responsibilities was to lead the process of crafting statements that defined our company's vision, mission, values, in conjunction with our senior leadership team. These exercises are absolutely necessary to establish the solid foundation for which a company's brand lives and breathes. So, as you can tell by my background, I am by nature a bit of a numbers geek. That's who I am at the core. But I just also happen to love everything about brands. I love great TV ads. I love flipping through magazines to see which ads suck me in. And I love watching marketers do things that resonate with me as a consumer. Don't get me wrong, I don't deem myself a marketer by any means. There's a reason why I majored in finance and accounting and not marketing. I'm more analytical in nature than I am creative. But I appreciate the unique challenge of branding, and especially that so few companies do a really good job at it. So what's branding, and why is it so hot nowadays? Essentially, branding is a feeling, thought, or emotion tied to a company and their product and service. Many brands are similar in quality and characteristics, but there's something deeper that sets the good ones apart. It's that it factor that connects with the consumer on an emotional level. Here's an example. Let's look at Apple and Samsung situation. In this story, Apple is a popular kid from the neighborhood, always looking fresh, cool, and clean. Samsung just settled in the neighborhood, tried to get along with the other kids, but realized that if he wants to be cool, he has to be like Apple or copy most of his features. Samsung's Galaxy S2 is equally as impressive as the iPhone, but Apple has a cult following that Samsung can't claim. So how did Apple achieve that? Meticulously. Apple nails all the small stuff. That attention to every detail instills a feeling of trust and loyalty among its users. Apple's products weren't always so great. In the 90s, for example, they began losing trust with consumers, and the company almost collapsed as a result. And then Steve Jobs returned, and he understood that Apple had to sell dreams, that Apple had to sell a lifestyle. Where other companies advertised their products' features and how well they worked, Jobs spearheaded products that we had to have. We needed them. We were out of the loop without them. There was an iPod, iPhone, iPad-shaped hole in our souls. Jobs attained the ultimate brass ring in Branding 101. It is still amazing to me how many companies view branding as managing marketing functions, such as advertising, logo management, creating brochures, putting a pretty face on a product. There are so many companies and top management teams, big and small, that don't invest the time and attention to brand management. In a recent study with senior executives, the corporate brand was the third most important corporate asset next to human capital and an established customer base. These same senior executives admitted that their CEO and executive teams paid only lip service to brand considerations. Today, there are just far too many brands and products chasing consumers. Consumers, therefore, like to quickly put everything into convenient categories. When you mention Volvo, for example, the first thing that comes to mind is safety. When we think of Google is the forefront of everyone's mind when we think about search. And Disney has become synonymous with fun family entertainment. In the strongest of cases, in everyday language, some brands have achieved such a strong association that the brand name has replaced the product name. These examples, for example, Kleenex for tissue, Band-Aids instead of bandages, chapstick for lip balm, Q-tips has replaced cotton swabs, and Vaseline for petroleum jelly. One way to determine the effectiveness of your brand is to ask your existing customers if they can explain your company in a sentence or two. If they cannot, you have some work to do. We are experiencing this now as Jugo evolves into a mature brand, participating in a very competitive retail market. 2 years ago, Jugo Juice was one of only maybe a couple brands that people thought about when thinking of enjoying a healthy smoothie or a freshly pressed juice. And then about 2 years ago, every high-profile quick-service company seemed to jump on the health bandwagon and introduce their version of a healthy smoothie to their menu offering. We're talking Starbucks, Tim Hortons, and McDonald's. Some big companies with some really big brand equity. So now, what sets Jugo apart? If others can come in and duplicate your product or features, it becomes all the more crucial that your brand stands for something beyond the product itself. What is the heart and soul that will resonate with consumers and encourage loyalty when there are so many players in the field? Why do you exist? What do you do, and how will you do it? These are all questions that we as a management team sought to define over a 2-day workshop a couple months ago. Without investing the time to answer these key questions, we're driving blind. Even as we formalized our brand Bible, as we internally call it, there are challenges in the environment in which Jugo participates every day. I like the following quote to help deliver this key message. You can't escape your brand. Either you make the customer experience or it is made without you. Every business has a brand, whether they like it or not. In branding, perception is reality. Essentially, every time you speak, discuss, share a story, or trash talk a brand, you're affecting its image. This is where the experience at every single Jugo Juice, whether at Chinook Mall, the Calgary Airport, or the Talisman Center, has to deliver on our brand proposition. If what you feel about our brand is not strengthened or promoted with every store visit, then the brand is compromised because the trust is diminished by the customer's own experience in actual use. And no amount of marketing will fix that. This is one of the largest challenges for me in my role. A core responsibility of mine is to ensure that the right people are on the bus and that we are executing on our brand position every day and in every way. It starts with our own team and the franchise that we recruit and award a franchise to, not to mention the hundreds of employees that are employed by our franchisees. You can see how it's possible for a brand to get diluted if the time and attention is not devoted to brand management. Brand management is the responsibility of all facets of an organization. In the case of Jugo Juice, it needs to be managed by not just the marketing team, but by the operations, the training, the real estate, and even store design team. In recent years, Jugo experienced a similar trend as many other reputable companies in our industry, such as McDonald's and Starbucks. The business model was built on increased distribution. It was the field of dreams approach to growth. Build it and they will come. Growth was achieved by opening new restaurants, and fast. Jugo Juice was lucky and experienced success right away. We were successful in that the brand resonated with customers and landlords across Canada, and with that success came a rapid pace of opening stores. However, at times the brand image suffers in this environment. As resources are stretched in an environment of self-preservation, just trying to keep up, the investment in the details that helped build your brand in the beginning may be compromised. As the brand loses relevance, the customer base shrinks, and there is a decline in customer loyalty. Howard Schultz, CEO of Starbucks, talks about this trend in his business book, Onward. I highly recommend you read that, by the way. Howard writes, "It's as if we were running a race, but no longer knew what we were running for." The first priority on his transformation agenda when he returned to the company in 2009 was to reignite the emotional connection with the customers, as he attributed this to be Starbucks' true value proposition. It wasn't only about a great cup of coffee, in his words, but rather the experience has with every visit and the emotional attachment that all of us have with that brand. Therefore, like McDonald's and Starbucks, for example, recognized and has implemented plans to fix in recent years, one of my first orders of business was, year after years of rapid growth, was to redefine our growth strategy with our team and our franchise partners. We would no longer be successful merely by opening more stores, but we would focus and reward organic growth based on attracting more customers to our stores. We would do fewer things and we would do them better, aligning everything we do to one common goal, all in an effort to strengthening our brand image in the consumer's minds, to encourage loyalty and in turn more frequent visits. I've had the great fortune to work for two small local entrepreneurial companies, as mentioned in the bio, Big Rock Brewery and Jugo Juice. The culture fostered creativity and contribution for all, which allowed me personally the opportunity to affect future strategy. There is one unique challenge that usually comes with this environment, however, and it is quite common. There is a founder that had a vision for their company, and they may have a difficult time adapting to the changing competitive landscapes. That is, they may have to adapt and change what their company stands for and where they're headed from what they first set out to do. You can imagine how difficult that is when it was they that had the vision years ago and they're intimate with it. They were the ones that invested blood, sweat, and tears in the beginning to launch a new idea. The reality is that entrepreneurs, by nature, do not typically love the process of sitting around a boardroom table to formalize a vision for their company, their strategy, or their brand. That can be a challenging obstacle for a leadership team when the leadership team seeks to define the business they are in and what their brand proposition will be, as it is these questions that drive the brand and its image. I experienced these challenges to varying degrees at both Big Rock and Jugo Juice. This founder's dilemma as I recently read in a Globe and Mail article, is quite common. As the article stressed, the challenge of this dynamic happens in companies of all shapes and sizes, including larger, better established organizations. Most recently and publicly, Research in Motion, the company that developed BlackBerry. If you think about it, the unique characteristics that entrepreneurs or company founders have that yielded initial success, stubbornness, risk-taking, that pie-in-the-sky thinking, can become a challenge through any strategic planning process. In the case of Research in Motion, drastic change was needed as management was out of touch and the company suffered for it. The brand had low emotional equity with their customers. If your product or brand is not relevant anymore, and the founders have a hard time seeing that through their emotionally invested lenses, it's time to create a team that will help them to get to where the company needs to be. I've had the fortune of working with founders that were open to change, and for the sake of the company that they started, were willing to adapt as needed. I consider myself truly fortunate for the experiences I've had, for the people with whom I've worked with, and the opportunities that have been presented to me. Well, I hope I've provided some insight in the fascinating topic of branding, including my own personal experience with directing Jugo Juice Future Path, which in part relies heavily on our brand equity position. We will always have work to do, as competition is fierce and it's not going away. But we welcome the challenge, and onward we go. So to conclude, as I mentioned, I wanted to share with you my top 5 insights for success that I've applied to my own life and career specifically. Hopefully they inspire you as you formulate your own path for success. Number 1, pursue excellence and refuse to accept the status quo. Good leaders look into the future and see things not through the lens of current reality, but through the lens of future possibility. In my personal career path, as mentioned, I started with Big Rock Brewery on a 1-year contract, accounting contract, 2 days after graduation. Very quickly I learned that this is a company I wanted to grow with. It had the culture, the opportunity, that it factor that really resonated with me. So I worked hard. I was happy to have been offered a permanent position as a junior accountant after that 1-year contract, and then moved to senior accountant and then to controller. It was around this time that I figured out that I didn't want to just be known as an accountant. I figured out by my mid-20s that I was really wanting to affect change. I wanted to be a part of driving future strategy and long-term vision. Therefore, I found ways, even though not defined within my role, to inject myself in other areas of the business. I would just wander over to the brew house or the packaging plant. I would talk to the brewing manager or the distribution manager. I would stick my nose in sales, and I would just try and offer and find out about those areas of the business and try and figure out ways that I could utilize my skill set to assist those managers in their roles. I was recognized for this effort, and that eventually led to my role as Manager of Finance and Strategic Business Development. So focus always on being in the business of exceeding expectations and not settling for the status quo. Number 2 is leadership. Surround yourself by smart people. I'm talking smarter than you people. My favorite quote comes from Ronald Reagan, of all people. Surround yourself by people smarter than you, hold them accountable, and get the hell out of their way. That requires that you hire the best of the best and that you have the patience to do so. Take the time to get the right people on your team. Seek people that are smarter than you in their area of discipline and expertise. If you get that right, your team will execute your plans better than you're capable of, and the entire team in your company will be better off for it. Number 3, look at yourself in the mirror and take ownership. One of my favorite business books, which I'm sure many people in this room have read, is Good to Great by Jim Collins. In it, Mr. Collins takes a critical look at companies that have evolved to become great. The book identifies many factors for a company to achieve greatness, and one of the most compelling arguments centers around leadership. One of the characteristics of the successful leaders was personal humility. These people credited others for the company's success and tended to blame themselves for the small bumps along the road to success. This window in the mirror behavior is one that I try and portray. I look out the window often to credit others for success. Again, because I try and have the right people on the bus. And look in the mirror for responsibility when things did not go according to plan. Number 4, work hard but don't forget to leave time to live life. As mentioned already, life threw me a curveball 3 years ago when we lost a member of our family. There was no warning and no fair notice. It was a tremendous loss from my daughters and my life. I remember being so scared, not sure how I was going to balance everything that all of us women juggle every day. One of the great lessons I learned through this experience, is to appreciate the people in your life and take the time to nurture those relationships and have fun along the way. We're all here today looking to strengthen our professional careers and opportunities. But remember, your career and personal aspirations do not have to be mutually exclusive. Trust me, you will be a better professional, spouse, mother, sister, and friend for accomplishing that balance. You only have one life to live, so embrace every moment. And lastly, number 5, achieving your painted picture. Of all the lessons I've had a difficult time with, it's allowing the 10% of problems that I face to consume 90% of my time and energy. It is very difficult to remain positive and forward-thinking when you allow the 10% of problems, which will always exist, by the way, to drag you down and keep you in the present. It is easy to let email and other tactical elements of your role consume your everyday and not leave time for strategic influence and vision work. The key here is to often get out of your office or at least away from your desk. Start writing ideas down. Visualize where you want to be in 1 year, or 2 years, or 3 years. Being disciplined to do this is very difficult. As I've said, it's one of my biggest challenges personally. But it is necessary if you're in a leadership role and you are responsible to elevate the business for future success. Take the time to create and execute on your painted picture, and good things will follow. That's it.